Hello, everyone. Welcome to Molehill Mountain, episode, 356. Who we got? Warren, Chaos, Chicago, Brian. Hello, everyone. Oh, Brian's here in the U.S. All right, nice. So let's see. What would I like to talk about this evening? If only I had written things down in advance. Oh, you'll miss the stream tomorrow? Ah, bummer. So, for the last little while, there has been an anime called Delicious in Dungeon. This has been, so far as I can tell, quite a highly anticipated show. Apparently the manga is very popular, and the animated adaptation just came out a few days ago. It's on Netflix, I believe. And the premise of this is it's Dungeons and Dragons, and it's not an isekai so far as I can tell. It's just a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons characters running around a dungeon, and instead of going back to town to procure provisions, they eat all the monsters that they come across. So it's a cooking show crossed with D&D. And I thought that sounded pretty cool. I like food. I eat some every day. I like food shows. I like anime. I like Dungeons and Dragons. So I thought I'd check it out. And the first episode is on Netflix, so I watched it, and I thought it was lousy. And that bummed me right out. Doesn't mean the show's lousy. I just think that the first episode is not very effective. I'll probably still watch the second episode, mainly because I've heard such good things about the series as a whole. And it's completely possible it might be one of those, it takes a little while to get going. Heck, the Yakuza games take a while to get going. I mean, some of them start with like a 30-minute cutscene. I remember I was playing one of them, and started the game, watching the cutscene. At some point, I had put the controller down and was just kind of like lying on the couch. And then it goes to gameplay, and Kiryu's standing there, and I'm like, why isn't he doing anything? Oh, this is a video game. Where's my controller? Oh, crap. So, don't mean to poop all over the entire show. I just don't think the very first episode was effective, and I will now attempt to articulate why I feel that way. So, the show opens with a party of adventurers getting getting wiped by everyone just dying to a red dragon. Big dragon. So, there's so the main knight, paladin, guy in armor and a sword is sitting there going, oh man, he's having an internal monologue. Oh man, this sucks. We're all gonna die. And his sister is like, Larry, no, and she pushes him out of the way, and the dragon just bites her in half. She doesn't fall in half, but she's sticking half out of its mouth, and it's got like teeth nearly as wide as she is. So I was thinking, oh wow, yeah, okay, she's pretty dead. This is not as lighthearted as the previews made me think this might be. But she casts, I don't know, evac or something like that, and three of the surviving party members get booted out of the dungeon. So our surviving party members are like, okay, here's the plan. We have to go back into the dungeon, back down to the 9th level or wherever that dragon is, to save my sister, because I guess she's alive? Although, I mean, that thing chomped on her midsection with really big teeth. I don't think she's surviving that. But he's thinking, okay, it swallowed her, so she's got time. I don't know how much time you think she has, but because okay, let's say that there's actually oxygen, that it swallowed her whole, and she doesn't just bleed to death from being bitten in half, but it swallows her, and there's actually oxygen in its stomach and something to recycle the air. So that's not a problem. Well, okay, sure. She's gonna thirst to death in a couple of days, so best be quick. They do pay lip service to the dragon. Is a big, low energy beast, so it sits around and hibernates mostly. So, very slow digestion. So we've got some time. Great. The whole idea of the Sarlacc pit in Star Wars, this like where you are slowly digested over 1,000 years. That's a pretty horrifying thought, but you'd thirst to death long before I mean, if it takes 1,000 years to digest you, you're just gonna die from dehydration long before, the gastric juices start eating through your clothes. If it's that damned slow. Still not a great way to go. But anyway, so they're like, okay, we need to get down to the we've set it doesn't make any sense, but it's like, it's possible to get back to the dragon in time to, I guess, cut my sister, or what's left of her, out of the dragon. They also make mention that the characters can die because one of the party members gets a face full of a slime, and she's like, oh man, my first death was to a slime. And I'm like, what are the rules here? Does it matter if you die? Like, because they also talk about they can revive corpses. So, what are the rules? Does she respawn somewhere else if she dies? I mean, if that's the case, then who cares? I mean, if it's gonna take 6 months to digest before she respawns, and that's going to be like really traumatizing and painful, okay, that makes sense. But so strike one for me is I don't understand the rules of this universe, or how anything works, or how urgent this is. Like, what kind of a time frame are we talking about? Do we need to get down there like in the next few hours? Days? A month? What are we talking about here? What are the stakes? Kind of an important thing to know, because if I don't know what the steak, very important in a food show. If I don't know what the stakes are, I don't know how to feel about anything. So that's one demerit, I'd say. So they're like, okay, let's regroup and rescue my sister. And they're like, but we have no money. And, we need money we're out of provisions. So we don't have any. What are we going to do? Sell all of our armor and weapons to buy food? Then we'd have no armor and weapons. And he's like, well, let's just eat our way through the dungeon. He happens to have a monster cookbook on his person. They're all acting like this is a humongous, radical idea that no one has ever. Who would think of eating? There's a cookbook, apparently. And they immediately run into a dude who cooks monsters. So this doesn't seem to be this far-fetched of an idea. This seems to be common enough that there's actually a cookbook that he happens to have, and they immediately run into a dude who's like, oh yeah, I cook monsters all the time. I know everything there is possibly to know about cooking monsters. Cool. Brian says, dragon stomachs, notoriously roomy, like whale stomachs. My friend Jonah regularly holidays in a dragon stomach. Yep. The smell can be a little off-putting at first, but otherwise. So, the characters in this first episode, keep in mind I'm only talking about the first episode, seem way more concerned about how to cook monsters and plants into food than actually getting down there to save the sister. Again, that might not be a big deal if they'd said something like, well, she clearly would have cast the spell of protection, which wraps her in a little hibernatory cocoon for 35 days. As long as we get down there and cut her out in 35 days, she's perfectly fine. Oh, okay, cool. So it's not that urgent. But one of the things that I found off-putting is no one seems to be, they walk like half an hour. It's, let's make camp. It's like, someone's being digested. You want to make camp here? Or you want to like get your asses down there? Like, is it not that big of a deal? Do we not really care about this woman? Are we more interested in food? I need more info about the world because I'm not sure if these characters are just easily distracted and that's supposed to be funny, or if they're just really callous and cold. I don't know. So that I found off-putting. But the other thing about the show that is just not working for me is all of the food and food techniques for the... Well, all of the food is made up. It's fantasy food. If you've ever seen Shokugeki no Food Wars, if you've ever seen Food Wars, part of the fun of that show is the food they're making is real food that well, not you or me probably, but a professional chef could actually make. They use real food, real ingredients, real cooking techniques. That's part of the fun of the show. When you get some of the other... there was another anime, another one of the isekai ones, where it's like, my farming life on another world or something. The fun thing about shows like that are they use real-world concepts and tools and farming techniques and agricultural techniques and actual crops as they build out their farm and farm life. Or that other one where the guy's like managing a city. You know, what the real world, or the implementation of real world procedures and knowledge is what makes these shows so fascinating. And where Delicious in Dungeon falls flat for me is the food is fake. Imagine how, Soma fighting in a Shokugeki in Food Wars wouldn't be very interesting if he says, well, I just made magic plum pudding. It's plums that are magic. All you have to do is light them with the green flame and they burst with a heavenly aroma. That wouldn't be interesting because you're just making stuff up. And that, at least the first episode, is how Delicious in Dungeon goes. They're like, hey, look, a slime. If you dry out a slime and you hold it in this little net thing and dry it out for 30 days, you can then chop it into bits and use it as gelatin or something like that. It's like, that's imaginative, that's creative, but that's not a real thing. You just made that up. So, for me anyway, it's just not very interesting. Because all the food is made up. It can do whatever you want. Do you want it to have magical properties? Sure. Do you want it to taste really good if you boil it with seaweed? Cool. Doesn't matter because it's a dragon tail or something, So I'll probably watch at least a second episode just to, because again, something with this much hype, there's got to be something there. But yeah, I was really disappointed by the first episode. I thought it was very ineffective. Great premise, it's a cool idea, but I just didn't feel it worked at all. so far as hooking me into watching a second episode. So, hey, Cafe Fox, talking about Delicious in Dungeon, a show about a group of Dungeons and Dragons adventurers who are moving through a Dungeons and Dragons dungeon to go get a dragon and eat all of the monsters on the way because they have no money for provisions. Which is a fun idea. I just didn't think at least the first episode was executed very well. Oh well, maybe it gets better. So, so let's see, what else are we doing? Okay, so back in I don't know, the summer, I guess, around roundabouts E3 time, although E3 is no longer a thing. Hey, did you hear that the ESA canceled E3? And everyone went, didn't you do that like a couple of years ago? Well, yeah, officially. There's some, Cafe Fox says, that sounds funny. It is. There's some cute moments in it. And it's animated quite well. It's definitely imaginative. I just don't think it's very effective, at least so far as the first episode goes. Anyway, so roundabouts E3 time last summer, there were a bunch of games, and one of them was a game called Cookie Cutter, which was a 2D Metroidvania, which is let's just call it a Metroid-like, because Castlevania doesn't deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as Metroid. Although, they came out, Metroid and Castlevania came out within like 2 months of each other, but the original Castlevania was not like Metroid. It really wasn't until a lot closer to Symphony of the Night in the mid-90s or so, 95, 96, somewhere on there, where it started really being a lot like Metroid. Anyway, I've mentioned that before. So there's a game called Cookie Cutter. It's a 2D art. It's a little robot who her creator got kidnapped by bad guys, so now she's going to run through a Metroid-like area and beat the snot out of everything there until she finds her creator and brings her back home. It's very pretty and it looked fun, so I picked it up because it was cheap, and I'm cheap, so it's a match made in heaven. And I played it, and I'll be honest, I thought this was going to be a short game, like a mini Metroid, like 8 hours. No, this is a I'm already at like 18 hours or something like that. It's a long game. I mean, I doubt it's like 100 hours or anything. I'm probably into the second half at least, maybe 60 to 70% of the way through the game, I would imagine. But it's an interesting game because it's very pretty. The art is very nice, so they nailed that. It also controls pretty darn well. The combat system that they came up for the game is it's got some unique elements, and I think it actually plays quite well. So there's light and heavy attacks, right? So light attacks are just regular punches and kicks, and then heavy attacks are whatever special weapon you have equipped at the time, which there are several different special weapons that you swap between. So there's a big punchy gauntlet, there's a chainsaw, there's an electric guitar, which is fun. You can beat things with an electric guitar, and it makes electric guitar strummy sounds. You can do power slides. It's really cool. What else? There's a gun, a laser gun. And the most of these secondary strong attack weapons double as environmental keys. Like the laser gun can power up certain doors. The chainsaw can break through certain crystal walls. So that's nice. So how the combat works is light attacks don't do much damage at all, but they build up your special meter, which allows you to use your strong attacks with your guitar, chainsaw, or gauntlet, or whatever you're using. and the gauntlet or guitar or chainsaw uses the meter that you're building up. So it's a balance between poking things with a light attack while dodging and staying out of the way of their attacks to build up enough meter to use the heavy attacks, which lower the meter, to try and get them in a state where you can do a finishing attack, which gives you health and more meter. You can also, like in Hollow Knight, did I say Hollow Knight? It's Hollow Knight. You can trade your meter for health, so similar there. And it's a nice back and forth. It actually works quite well. There's a parry mechanic, which will instantly put the characters in a finishing move state. Every enemy, every unique enemy has a unique finishing move that your Cherry, her character, the character you play as, will perform on them. So aesthetically, there's a lot to like. Story-wise, not so much. Basic premise is fine. The little robot that could is battling against the hordes of evil to rescue her creator. Cool, right? It's a fine premise. The problem is I think budget. The game has a pretty strong opening. Has a little opening cutscene where we see the creator, Shinji or whatever her name is. She creates her little robot and they're happy, and then she gets kidnapped and they dismantle the robot and it limps after them. No, give her back! And then they crush her to death, and then splash, title screen, and then she wakes up. Some dude has put her back together and she starts off on her revenge. That whole opening sequence is quite well done. It's fully voiced, and the voiceovers are, especially the actor who's playing Cherry, she goes for it. She emotes, and it's effective. And then there is no voice work anywhere else in the game so far. I mean, maybe the ending has voice work, but there's no. It just stops before the opening cutscene really is finished, because you get to the guy who repairs you and it's all dialogue. There's no more. It's really awkward. Probably a budget thing. They could only get 3 actors and they had them for an hour each. That happens. But another thing that tells me that this didn't have a ton of budget is there are a lot of things in this game that don't work right. Like, for example, the menuing is consistently broken. For example, if you get into the teleporter, it's hard to describe. I think I'd have to play it some more to see exactly what's going on, but the cursor constantly moves further than you want it to, even though you do use the plus pad to move the cursor to select different options. Because when you go to the teleporter, you can teleport or upgrade your character or do a couple other things. If you move too far down, you can't move back up, and you have to exit out of the teleporter and go back in. It's that kind of weird jank that feels like it would be fixed. And this game has already had one hotfix, but this wasn't fixed. And there's just a lot of really weird jank like that. The game did freeze on me very early. It's only happened once. There's a couple really odd choices, like the respawn station. One of the respawn stations is placed a significant walk from the boss room, so if you fail to the boss, you have to run down a fairly long hallway just to go back in the room and try again. It's like, just put the respawn point outside the boss room, similar to how you're doing it in the rest of the game. The map has a couple issues where some things aren't labeled. There are some icons that don't disappear when they're supposed to. Like there's icons on the map that indicate where points of interest, which is great because it's a Metroid type game. You want to remember where the special crystal wall is so you can break it down once you get the chainsaw. But once you break the crystal wall, it's supposed to remove that icon. And in a couple of cases, when I did the thing, the icon stayed on the map. So now I just have to remember that that was already taken care of and not wander all the way back. Map is also one of those that fills in automatically as you go. But there are a few sections of the map that just won't fill in correctly. I mean, it's not like an entire room won't fill in, but there's like a horizontal line through the room that just won't fill in correctly, stuff like that. So, yeah, I enjoy the game. I'm actually having fun playing it, but it does feel like whoever made it feels like their first game, and it feels like they were restricted by budget. Although, for the most part, it has it where it counts. It's definitely a looker. It's the animation's very nice. The camera is pulled back maybe a bit too far. The characters are kind of small, and you do lose a lot of the detail. There's some enemy horde rooms where you get locked in a room. There's a bunch of enemies, and there's so much going on the screen, especially with fun particle effects, and it's a looker. But a lot of times I'm like, I don't know where my character is. I'm like, where'd she go? I'm dead because I literally could not find my character because zoomed back too far, lost in a sea of enemies and flashy lights and particle effects and stuff. The early game could use a bit more variety in enemies. Very early game, there's 2 enemies. Well, three or four if you count a palette swap. But for the first hour or so of the game, you're fighting like the same 2 enemies, and it's a little dull. That works itself out as you get further into the game. There's a much larger variety of enemies. But another thing is the story is told through text logs, but it's not particularly interesting. It's not terribly coherent either. What was I going to say? There's some other stuff. There's one character that you can rescue and send her back to base, and she'll do things for you. She'll if you find this certain thing, I'll do a thing for you. But they never tell you how that works or where you go for the thing. It's something you just have to stumble across, and that's not great. There's another guy who wants 4 pieces of a motorcycle, but no matter how many parts you find, he always tells you there's 4 more parts to find. So you have to go into the menu and count. It's like, oh, okay, I've got 2 or 3, so there's 1 more. It's pretty well polished as far as gameplay goes, but just the way some things work, it feels like we had some great artists and very competent programmers put together a game, but not really have the time to thoroughly play test it. Right? That's what it feels like. It feels like the game was put together by very passionate and very competent people, but it wasn't thoroughly play tested. A lot of the issues I'm running into are the kind of things you're like, someone had to have seen that, right? It's impossible to play this and not notice that. So, I don't know if it was a time thing or a money thing, or, they got someone to publish it and they're like, no, it's out by Christmas. Fix it in a patch. But, the game's only $15, so, and it's fairly beefy as far as a $15 game goes. But it's got it where it counts. It's aesthetically attractive, although there isn't a lot of... I don't find the environments and characters particularly cohesive. Nothing feels like it's organic or belongs in the world. Like, it's just, here's this level, here's this level, here's this level, and they're all fine, you know, but they don't feel like part of a world for the most part. There's that incongruity that keeps it from feeling like a contiguous world. And all the enemies, it's like, why is this particular enemy here? Where'd they come from? I mean, it's a cool goo monster, but why is there a goo monster here, right? But if you like Metroid games and the art appeals to you, it plays pretty well. There's some jank you're going to have to work past, and some a couple design decisions where you're like, wait, why did you do it that way? Not gameplay loop type game design like stuff in the combat. I think all that works pretty well. But just weird stuff like, why did you place the respawn portal so far away from the boss door? Why? I mean, it's not even like we expect you to run a gauntlet of monsters or be able to get to the boss without getting damaged by the monsters and obstacles that are in your way. It's like, no, it's just an empty path that I have to run down every single time I want. Why didn't you just put the damn thing by the door? So that kind of thing. Overall, I'm enjoying Cookie Cutter. I don't know why it's called Cookie Cutter, though. The character's name is Cherry. They do call her, or something about her, Cookie Cutter. Again, the story is not particularly strong, so I'm having trouble following. Also, the guy who put you back together, who the hell is this? He's never established. He's just there. He's like, oh, I guess this is Uncle Ed. He's just a friend of my creator. Okay. Yeah, it's just, it's not executed as well as it could have, is what I'm trying to express. But overall, I'm having fun with it. So, which brings us to Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth, which comes out later this month. It's the latest in many of the Yakuza games. I played the demo, which was locked behind a weird paywall. Like, I don't know if this was Sega's decision or RGG's decision, but if you want my opinion, you probably don't. Well, I mean, you're watching this podcast, so here we go. Demos for video games that you want people to buy, particularly expensive games that you want people to drop $70 for, or even more. You might want them to buy the deluxe edition for $90 or the ultimate edition for $120 or whatever it is, right? So there's a product, you want to sell it, so you give people a taste, and you make them pay for that taste. No, that's not what you do. The sample is free. It's a sample. Demos should be free. For those who don't know, the Infinite Wealth demo is included with the Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name game, which is a game. It's got a long, unwieldy title, but that's a game. It costs, I think it's $40. If you want to play the Infinite Wealth demo, you have to drop $40 on Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, and you have to beat Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name. Then you can play the demo, and maybe that will convince you to drop $70 on their new game. Demos should be free. You're shooting yourself in the foot. Don't put a demo behind a paywall. That's dumb, I think. Because when you put the demo in the menu of a video game that you have to buy, only the people who buy that video game are going to be able to play the demo. And the people who are going to pay $40 for Like a Dragon Gaiden, the Yakuza side story, are the Venn diagram of people who are going to buy this game and buy Infinite Wealth, probably a damn circle. You know, you're preaching to the choir here. It's the people who aren't already buying everything in the series that you really want to. Hey, come here, check this out. It's so cool. It seems like a ill-advised decision, says I. Well, ain't my buck. So anyway, but I did play the demo because I bought Like a Dragon Gaiden: The Man Who Erased His Name, and I beat Like a Dragon Gaiden: The Man Who Erased His Name, and so I played the Infinite Wealth demo, and I thought it was quite good. It really should have been free for everyone. Seriously, dumbasses, you're losing sales here. So weird. Maybe there's a really, if any theories in the chat, you know, if you think locking the demo behind a paywall is a good idea, actually, or if you have a theory, let me know. I can't think of a good reason to do it that way. But so I played the Infinite Wealth demo, and Infinite Wealth is like Yakuza Like a Dragon, the turn-based battle system, the instead of just a active time brawler like most of the Yakuza games. When I played Yakuza Like a Dragon, I enjoy. I'm a big fan of RPGs and turn-based mechanics. If you'd see the Sunday streams, you're probably aware of that. So I was all in on that change, and it turned out pretty darn well. But while playing that game, I did, and I probably mentioned it on stream, this game has room to improve. For example, one of the very cool things about the Yakuza games is when you're out in the streets beating the snot out of everyone who keeps picking a fight with you, even though you are the biggest, burliest, meanest looking dude walking down the street. I still don't understand why people are like, hey, look at that 6'5" brick shithouse with the scowl that would make Charles Bronson run away in fear. I bet we could take him. Okay, Brian has a theory. It's the IKEA effect. You value something more if you have to work for it. Fans of the series that work for the demo will value it more and are more likely to buy the next game. I mean, maybe, but I also feel that everyone who's going to buy Like a Dragon Gaiden: The Man Who Erased His Name, they're going to buy Infinite Wealth. They were already going to buy it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's data that shows me wrong. Maybe there's data that says that the demographic that we really need to convince to buy Infinite Wealth are the people who are dropping money on Gaiden. Like, maybe there's data that says, we've got this huge group of people that are going to buy Infinite Wealth. Okay, tell me about the group of people who are not. They're all the people who bought the side story. Well, that's weird. Maybe. Now, I could see... Maybe if they were like... You know, they had like... the demo comes in two parts. There's a story demo, which is, as the name implies, a lot more story-focused. Gets more into the cutscenes and characters. There's some battling. But the other one is wander around Honolulu and do some side quests, do some karaoke, feed a dog, swim in the ocean, do all kinds of stuff, right? Get on a Segway and tool around, do the Pokemon Snap minigame, whatever it's called. Release that for free for everyone to play, but then say, hey, we've got a third demo. We've got a demo for the Dondoko Island. Dondoko? Something like that. The Animal Crossing mini game. the Dondoko Island demo, but that's exclusive to the Gaiden game. So everyone play the demo, and if you're really hooked, and you want even more, hey, here's a game that you'll probably enjoy. Get that, and you'll get another part of the demo. That might work. That might be an interesting way to do things, but I think just locking the entire demo behind a paywall, I would think, although intuition isn't the best way to go about divining the truth, but my intuition tells me that most of the people who are buying Gaiden are people who are very likely going to buy Infinite Wealth. Warren says, work hard for a demo, but it's a freaking demo! Exactly. Cafe Fox says, yeah, it really should be available for everyone to play for free instead of just catering to the fans. Yeah, I just feel that, I'm not the person who needed the demo. But regardless, how's the demo? It's quite good. One of the things I was talking about the battling system is in the games you do heat actions. One of the fun things is you can pick stuff up off the ground, chairs, bicycles, traffic cones, nunchucks, because they just happen to be lying around the streets of Kamurocho for some reason, and beat people over the head with it. Anything that's not nailed down in Yakuza, typically you can pick up and hit someone over the head with. It's great. Potted plants, furniture, tables, chairs, anything. That element was kind of missing in the RPG, the turn-based battle one. It was there to an extent. If there happened to be, I think, a traffic cone or a chair between where you were standing and the enemy you're about to smack, sometimes your character would pick it up and smack him over the head with it. It wasn't something you could really do on purpose because you couldn't control where your characters were positioned. They kind of wandered around the playfield by themselves, but positioning really had nothing to do with anything. It was just to make the visuals more interesting. You pick which enemy you want to hit out of the menu, and as your character ran over, if they happened to run by a traffic cone, maybe they'd pick it up and smack them in the face. Bicycles, if there happened to be a bicycle in front, bicycles are really any other stage object. They'd, kick it into the enemy, which, cool, but not as satisfying. And I was like, what would make this better is if you could actually control where your character was standing so that you could purposefully interact with environmental objects. And maybe, line characters up to hit one into the other. Or, get around another character so you don't run into somebody on accident. That's how Infinite Wealth works. So they were listening to me and they didn't pay me a damned dime. Not that I'm bitter or anything. Because, honestly, I was the only one who had that brilliant idea. So they definitely stole from me. In Infinite Wealth, instead of the characters kind of wandering by themselves, when it's whichever character's turn is, you have an active circle around that you can move within, so that you can position yourself. So if you stand near a stage object, you get an icon, and you can attack, and your character will pick up that stage object. Could be anything from a traffic cone or a bicycle or a beach ball or whatever, and smack the enemy with it. You can also move to one of your player characters and do a team attack. You can also move to try and line up enemies and use specific attacks to knock one into another. So there's a lot more strategy in the turn-based battling system in Infinite Wealth, and I think this is an excellent step in the right direction. The demo, which I think this is the same demo that they were showing off back in October, so take this with a grain of salt, but battles indoors, the camera has a little bit of trouble with that, because basically the camera's trying to shoot the big flashy moves that you're doing, but in the confines of I was doing a fight in a bar, there was a bunch of times that the camera would get lost or get stuck or get pinched, and I wouldn't get a clear shot of what was happening. Older demo, they may have tweaked and fixed that by now. Who knows? We'll have to see in the final game. Another thing that's common to all of the Yakuza games is when you're in a cutscene, in the back, especially if you're outside on the streets of Kamurocho, there's pedestrians walking around. If they happen to walk into the cutscene, they realize they're about to walk into the cutscene and they'll just turn around and walk away. So almost every time you're in a cutscene in Yakuza out on the street, you'll see people walking towards you and then, whoops, turn around and walk the other way. You're doing a thing here, sorry. Didn't need to go that way, just going to turn around and go away. That seems to have been addressed somewhat. I still noticed it happening, but what I noticed is a lot of the cutscenes would happen off of the main thoroughways. So not like in the middle of the street or on the sidewalk. So you could still have the pedestrians walking around in the background without them being in danger of walking straight into the middle of the scene. So a better way of handling that. So good job. Not perfect. I did catch a few instances of characters going, oh, whoops, and turning around, walking the other way. They also do a really nice job of having a different... in Kamurocho, there's just... Well, I mean, it's the pleasure district, so it's, all adults. But in Honolulu, it's a tourist location, so there's adults, there's kids, I saw a couple strollers. No babies in the strollers, though. They're just empty strollers. I don't know if that's an asset that wasn't available yet, or don't know, but there's a lot of people just pushing empty strollers. There's a lot of animals. There's dogs, cats, and birds. A much greater variety of body types. So it's really great location. So they've done a nice job there. And it was a lot of fun to play. There was even in the limited restricted demo, there was a lot of unexpected stuff that happened. For example, I went in not knowing that you could shake trees to dislodge coconuts and bananas and stuff, and apparently they're ingredients for cooking, maybe? So, I shook every tree I walked past, and coconuts would fall out. But one time, a dude dressed as a coconut fell out of the tree and picked a fight. So, that's like, okay, that did not expect that to happen. So that was hilarious. There's a wonderful little side quest that is a girl is she's on a field trip to Hawaii with her class, and she wants to do that Japanese thing that confess my love, the whole confession thing that's a trope in anime, at least. I don't know if that's a cultural thing in Japan. I don't know if that's a thing that anyone actually does, or if that's just an anime thing, but here it is. So she's like, I've got my letter that expresses my feeling. That's like, I think you should talk to people first and get to know them first and see if you have any chemistry first, and then go on a date, get some coffee or something first. I don't understand this whole trope of, I see someone way over there, I'ma marry that person. It's like, what are you you don't even know that person. Okay, they're attractive, and if that's all you're going for, good luck. Good, hey, you know what you want, go get it, I guess. But that whole trope just doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, so schoolgirl's like, I'm going to confess to the boy I like. And here's the thing: there's apparently a legend that if you confess to someone who's buried in the sand, then they will like you. They will reciprocate your feelings, I guess. But of course, Kasuga accidentally knocks her over, so she's covered in mud, and she's like, by the time I wash off my shirt, my would-be boyfriend will not be buried in the sand anymore. So tell you what, I'm gonna go clean off. You deliver the letter to my would-be boyfriend, and then we'll meet up. Make sure you deliver it to the right guy, though, because that would be horribly embarrassing. So Kasuga's like, well, okay, sure. And then he goes over there, and there's like 20 dudes buried up to their neck in the sand. And he only knows, okay, I know his name, and I know he has short hair and glasses. So this quest, you have to talk to the heads poking out of the sand. It's like, hey, do you know Frank? He's like, oh yeah, I know he's not in the 5th row. So it's one of those. It's you have to, okay, he's not in the 5th row. He's in the row that's between the yellow and the red umbrella. He's not next to a watermelon. So you have to figure out which person it is, like that. Which is very stupid. You just say, which one y'all is Frank? You know? And at no point does he ever just ask him, hey, are you Frank? He just says, well, I've deduced it must be this guy. And I did get it right, so that was nice. I don't know what happens if you get it wrong, but... so... also, there's some fun stuff. There's job classes return, but instead of just going to the... In the first game, you went to the employment agency and just picked a job. As long as your stats were high enough, as your stats increase, you'd unlock more and more jobs. In this one, it seems like you have to go on little Hawaiian tours to unlock job classes, which is really the same thing, but it's a lot more entertaining than just, okay, my stats are high enough, I'm going to run over here and pick a thing out of a list. Now it's, okay, my stats are high enough, I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go on a snorkel vacation. And so there's a, 45-minute cutscene with Kasuga and his friends snorkeling and playing with dolphins and frolicking on the beach, and then he's like, you know what? I bet I could hit people with a surfboard! And that unlocks the Aquanaut class or something like that, where he twirls the surfboard, he wanders around in a wetsuit, twirls a surfboard like a street corner sign twirler, and now he can hit people over the head with a surfboard. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly the same thing, but it's... I mean, they just added a bit of flash to it. It might become more involved later in the game, but from what I saw in the demo. Anyway, I didn't need a demo to convince me to buy Infinite Wealth. I'm a huge fan of this franchise. Game looks great. Really looking forward to playing it. The problem is the game's $70. And I'm a cheapskate. I don't pay $70 for video games. Even though Infinite Wealth is probably well worth $70, I'm sure it's a very wide-ranging, very long, very involved, lots of different things to do. If any game's worth $70, this is probably one of them. But I'm a stubborn pain in the butt. I actually just picked up, do I have it sitting near me? No, I don't, but I just bought the Resident Evil 4 remake, which I believe came out in March of last year. Number one, I think it was $60 when it came out, but I also knew that had very high confidence that they were going to do a Separate Ways DLC. So I waited until last month when the game dropped to $30. and I bought the game for $30, $10 for the DLC, 40 for the entire thing. So all I had to do was wait 10 months. I really don't want to wait 10 months or really any time at all to play. Was the $30 I saved worth the 10 months? For this particular game, yeah, I've played Resident Evil 4. This is the remake, but I could wait. Infinite Wealth, I don't really want to wait for. Not really want to pay it, but to me, it's kind of the principle of the thing. But I mean, I could always subsidize the purchase price with Patreon money. I could, spend $50 of my own and $20 Patreon money, and then just dedicate a Sunday stream to it. That's one way I could justify it to myself. No one cares, but that's how I justify it to myself. So I don't know yet. Busy playing Cookie Cutter. Got Resident Evil 4 to play. Who knows? Maybe I'll also, if I pre-order it, I get the 2 job classes, which I'm sure will be very cute. The DLC job classes in the first game, the Rockstar and Matriarch, for Yakuza Matriarch, were very cool. So I'm sure these will be cool too. So if I bought it, if it dropped to 50 later, I'd still probably have to drop 10 for, I'd have to wait for it to drop to 40 so that I could buy that and the $10 for, well, that actually probably be $5, I think the last one was. So I'd have to wait till it drops to $45 so I could buy that plus the $5 DLC to get the extra jobs. So it's tough being cheap. So that's what's on my mind. But hey, I've got a birthday coming up, so we'll see what happens. And that's it for tonight. So, Brian, have a nice flight back. That's a long flight. Hope you all had pleasant holidays, and tomorrow we will play some more Trails to Azure. We are doing the Phantom Thief Blue Blanc scavenger hunt, so that's always fun. Highlight of each of these games, of course. So, hope to see you then. As for me, I have to go to Trader Joe's before they close because I need to get chicken sausage and tortillas and coconut oil and all kinds of things. So, alright, that's it out of me. Hope to see y'all for except Brian who's on a plane. See y'all tomorrow for the Sunday stream, and have a good night, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.